If no general public comment, then uh,
then
appro-
approval.
approval of minutes. Um, There was one set of minutes, I was not there for that meeting, so unless we need it for
Needed for
a
a
quorum vote, I
forum.
will
I
abstain from the vote.
will abstain from.
If everybody
So
could just stay muted while they're, unless they're speaking.
feedback going on here. Probably good if everybody keeps muted unless they're speaking. That's better. It's gone now. So, motion to approve those minutes. Someone want to make a motion, please? Made by Paul, second. Downey. Any amendments, modifications? If not, all in favor, roll call vote. Sarah?
All right, roll call for the minutes. Downey,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Mason,
Yes.
and Kevin.
Well, I'll abstain since we have an adequate number of yes votes not to need that. I understand that that's correct, Sarah, right? Technically, one does not have to be there to vote on the minutes.
That's correct. You can, or you can abstain, if
Okay,
you're.
well, in this case, I'll abstain since we don't need it. So the next case is our restoration effort at the old golf course on Old Wilson Road. Who's here to present on that?
Hi, my name is Julianne Busa with Fuss & O'Neill. I'm the project manager for the engineering team, and we have two other folks here today. I'll let them introduce themselves, one of my colleagues, and then someone from DER.
Hello, my name is Michael Soares. I'm a wetland scientist with Fuss & O'Neill. I apologize, I'm trying to get my video to come on, but I've logged in and out a few times and can't seem to join you visually, so I apologize for that. I will try to
Your voice
keep.
is clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kate Benson with the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration, part of the Department of Fish and Game, and I'm the project manager from the state side, working with the city, Mass Audubon, and Fuss & O'Neill on this project. Thanks.
Great. So Michael's going to give a brief presentation momentarily, and I'll turn it over to him. But I think most of the commission was present for a site visit last, I think that was last Wednesday, and so are familiar with the site. And I believe all commissioners have been there at some point, but I know folks have differing levels of familiarity with the project as it's proposed. So there's a lot of elements. I'll preface by saying that, and we'll give sort of a brief overview, but please feel free to ask questions then about anything you'd like us to go into more detail on. And with that, I will turn it over to Michael.
Julie?
Yeah.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Now it looks,
There we
yes,
go.
there it is.
Okay. Well, I'll become better friends with Zoom in the future, I guess, but not tonight. I apologize. I'm sorry I couldn't join you all at the site walk last week. I've really enjoyed this project and enjoyed being at that site. I'm glad some of you had a chance to get there. I've been involved in the project since the beginning. Been responsible for a lot of data collection on the site, including the wetland delineation, and also involved with our project team and our close work with Mass DER and the city and Mass Audubon on the assessments and design of this project. So it's been a close, successful team, and I'm excited to talk with you about it. And I think we're a small group. If you have questions, please just jump in, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end for any additional follow-up.
Good enough.
So just a quick a really kind of broad overview of the site. It's a 91-acre project area that we're focused on, which is the golf course area that's within the city-owned property of about 105 acres here. Very broadly, it's adjacent to a lot of other protected open space. It's clear that the city recognized this as a huge opportunity to not only enhance the former golf course, but also create a lot of interesting connections and enhance the public resource that it is already, that people are already enjoying. The resource areas, and we'll get into this a little more as I get into the presentation. The resource areas that concern the city are the bank and land underwater associated with two intermittent streams on the site, as well as a pond. The bordering vegetated wetlands and a few small isolated vegetated wetlands that are regulated by the city. We also have some bordering land subject to flooding and your 40-foot buffer around BLSF, and then the WPA's 100-foot buffer zone. In addition to that, we've gone through permitting with MEPA, or permitting and approvals with MEPA, with 404 and 401, with Army Corps, NPDES construction general permit that would be issued prior to construction. And then the Massachusetts Historic Commission, which we did hear back from that there was determined to have no effect on those historic or cultural resources from the project. And just the maps here, just to give you a general sense of where we are in town, and then a more zoomed in area kind of showing the project area that we're going to be focused on, and roughly the topography. So it's a pretty flat site, but there is in the middle kind of a steeper section. And as you can see, the call out in that larger topo map, Nashawanek Brook runs pretty much through the center of the site, kind of flowing southeasterly from Old Wilson Road, exiting at the southeast end of the site. So the site today was an abandoned golf course. It was an active golf course for about 40 years until the city acquired it. And when you have to manage land to have sort of a very specific use, you can imagine the amount of alterations that need to go forward in order to maintain a very simplified system. So we've got a number of culverts that are used for stream crossings, either at Old Wilson Road or into the site. The stream itself was channelized, probably excavated and simplified to move water as quickly as possible through the site. There's extensive tile draining underneath the existing surface, again, to further dry it out. All the native plant vegetation, you can imagine this was a forest and a wetland system, so all that vegetation was removed and simplified to the turf grass. So a lot of modifications. That also doesn't include fill that was brought in to build tee boxes, to build the cart paths. So a lot of modifications to the natural landscape. So as a wetland delineator, when we look at soils and vegetation and water table, this site was unique in that I didn't have many of those criteria as I typically see them in other natural systems. So challenging site, but I think really spent a lot of time there. We were able to carefully delineate the site, but just to try to give you a sense of the extent of modifications. The constructed pond photos here are of the earthen dam itself and not the pond. So the earthen dam impounds the pond, and then you can see the culvert through that is a major disconnection for aquatic passage. And just below that large culvert, you can see some smaller plastic culverts that I believe are connected to the old tile drains that are still, or most are still removed, but I'm sure some are still out there. Just to give you a sense of the number of constricting structures that are on Nashawanek Brook, I think 4 of these are already existing undersized culverts, either at Old Wilson Road or into the site. The other red circles are where there are concrete blocks to create a sort of a stream crossing for the golf carts. So just to kind of just to show one example of the extent of modifications that have gone on here. It would be very difficult to kind of show the extent of tile drainage, of excavation, of gravel drainage ways that are on the site. But there's quite a lot. And the goals of this project are to basically reverse all of that. So the site is a Mass Division of Ecological Restoration Priority Project. That means the division will help with financial and technical assistance through the assessment, design, and permitting phase that we're in, and will continue to support the project. We're applying as an Ecological Restoration Limited project to restore that stream channel, the adjacent floodplains, wetlands, upland forested area, or once forest, to be forested again, and improve the site's ability to retain, infiltrate, and move water more slowly through the system. Right now, as you can imagine, the owners of the golf course wanted to move water as quickly as possible off-site to have a drive golf course. All that export of water very quickly has detrimental impacts, not only to habitat, but also downstream. You can imagine the erosive force of that water moving off-site so quickly. So the idea is to slow the system down, renaturalize it, give it a chance for wetlands and floodplains to retain that water, and then release it as slowly as possible, and also be uptaken by the plants. Given the simplification of vegetation, the fairways, many of them are also going to be reforested and trying to bring back that diversity of a forested landscape here. And I just want to touch on this. We often work at Fuss and O'Neill and in this project team utilizing the approach of nature-based restoration. And the philosophy there is to intervene in a way that sets up the natural systems to then continue the restoration forward. So the idea is not to necessarily build the stream, for example. The idea is to intervene in certain ways so that the stream and the hydraulic and hydrologic function will then create the restoration and the full repair of that stream over time. So we'll get more into the project in a few minutes, but I just wanted to touch on that. This is not a heavy engineering approach other than maybe the dam removal, culvert removal. The ecological systems are really trying to get in there and intervene a little bit, and then let those natural systems do the majority of restoration, and then monitoring will make sure that they succeed as we intend them to. There's also a pretty significant aspect to the project that is about public access. The public already use it, but the proposed design creates a lot of new ADA trail access deep into the site with trail loops, an enhanced trail system, maintaining all the existing connectivity that the trail system has, and then also formalizing the parking area and trailhead at Old Wilson Road. We don't have that now, and so this project will kind of create more of a gateway off of Old Wilson Road. So here's the concept plan that we worked on prior to the set of design plans that were submitted with the NOI. And there's a lot going on here. So the numbers on the left are kind of broken up. The first 20 are just kind of the site improvements and amenities. 21 through 37 are sort of all the ecological elements. We do describe a lot of these in our narrative, or all of these, I think, in our narrative in the NOI. And then I added these call outs just to illuminate or kind of highlight some of the main ecological design elements of the project. So if we could start at the top and just kind of walk through quickly on these call outs. At the number 3, the Old Wilson Road existing culvert will be taken out and a pedestrian bridge will be put in there. So the road will be dead-ended on either side, but pedestrian access will still be maintained. That whole sort of flat area up near Wilson Road was formerly wetlands. We can see that in the soils and in some of the vegetation coming up. So there will be some earthwork there to kind of roughen the surface and release the dormant seed bank and allow the hydrology to kind of function as it should to create emergent wetlands in that northwest area.
Excuse me. Why is it that the culvert itself See, I'm opposed.
Excuse me, there will be time for questions after the presentation.
I did offer
proceed.
questions during, but yeah, we'll wait till the
No,
end.
no, I understand, but we need to have, so make a note of your question. We want to get back to it, but we want to hear the basic layout first. Thank you.
Okay. So just south of the proposed culvert removal would be restored wetlands. Some are new, some are recreated given the extent of impacts that they've undergone through the creation of the golf course. The stream through there is quite straight and channelized, so the approach will be to use some root wads and other woody debris to create basically deflection points in the stream and to induce meandering in that stream system. As you get down into the middle of the site, the stream gets a little bit steeper. And so there will be less wood added there, but there will be a lot of plantings in that riparian zone over time that wood will be able to be incorporated into the stream naturally. And you can see through the whole design, there's a lot of wood being put into the stream. And that is just really a way that natural streams work, is they bring a lot of wood in. All that roughness creates sediment capture to grade and repair the stream bed, or just creates ways for the water to have to move around that either slow the flow or allow the stream to start to create the shape that it naturally would in this landscape. Right now, it is very straight and very channelized, and all of our interventions are an idea to slow the flow down, connect to floodplains, and create some sinuosity through the whole system. As we get farther down, right in the middle, you can see that the pond is no longer there. The goal is to recreate the stream channel as it was before, and recreate the aquatic passage through there. As we get farther south into the bottom of the site, we have kind of a focus of plantings and beaver dam analogs, and some other wood in the streams. And the idea here is to create some immediate structures, I guess, but I wouldn't really call them create some immediate features in the stream that will add wood and slow the flow a little bit. But also beaver dam analogs are basically a starter beaver dam. And the beaver buffet plantings are part of this bigger picture of recruiting beaver into this lower part of the site. They're currently living on the site, or in the site in the pond in this lower part of the stream, and they're also just south of the site. And so we don't have to get into all the benefits of beavers, but they are basically wetland and habitat creators and excellent in terms of controlling flow and improving water quality. And so this is one way that this site with really no infrastructure potential impacts can bring them in and allow them to continue to diversify the site. You can see the access loop is also shown on here. It's all in black, but we have some other images in the plan set that kind of clearly show which trails are the ADA trails and which trails are of different access types, I would say. So here's just to kind of quickly touch on the impacts that are being proposed through the project. The image on the left is the sketch of my delineation that was done in 2023 and 2024. Green are wetlands, blue is water. The small orange areas are isolated vegetated wetlands. The green are bordering vegetated wetlands. And then just added the other image here just to try to give some comparison of how these areas might change. This table is from our submission. It's on page 22 of the packet, or page 22 of the narrative, maybe. But I just wanted to highlight that we do have some, significant square footage for all these, but really a lot of what's happening is that they're being converted. So the loss of bank, that bank is being lost because the pond is being converted from a pond back into a stream, and the bordering land subject to flooding that was there previously. We're adding almost 4 acres of bordering vegetated wetland. The loss of isolated vegetated wetland is because those are going to be converted into bordering vegetated wetlands. Land underwater, again, being converted to BLSF because of the pond rather being changed back into a stream channel. And the BLSF will pretty much stay the same across the site. So we're not a lot of extensive grade changes across the site. It's more about helping the stream restore itself, and then bringing back the wetlands, and then a lot of vegetation, a lot of planting through the site. So we had these also worked up to try to give a sense to the community and to you as well of what we can expect or what we hope this to look like in the years to come. This would be post-restoration at Old Wilson Road, where the culvert is currently. I would say this is 5 to 10 years down the road once woody vegetation has had a chance to establish. Right now, it would be more of an open herbaceous wetland for the time being. This is close to that area, the parking, new parking lot and main trailhead heading into the site on the east side of Old Wilson Road. And this is the beaver recruitment area at the far southeast end of the site. And the two images here, the one on the left is sort of, you can imagine if the beaver dam analogs are put in the near term, in the first 1 to 2 years, it might look more like the picture on the left, where there is a trail proposed there now that could be used. But, part of the goal with this site that we've talked about a lot with this team, or one of the opportunities, is to let people learn about how natural systems can change. And water more than anything, I think, can really show us that. And this site is an opportunity where if the beavers move in and the site changes, the impoundments are then populated by beaver and maintained by the beaver, that trail would go away. But that would help people understand that this is a changing landscape as all landscapes change. And so I think the size of the site and the diversity of the site, of all the different habitat types, I think this was a really interesting idea that we can do something ecological, but also use it as an education opportunity for the community. So this is my last slide. I just wanted to come back to the main concept here. And we're happy to talk through this image or other images that I showed. I also have the plans up if anybody is interested in looking at certain parts of the restoration sheets or other parts of the plan set. So thank you very much, and happy to take questions if you have them.
Yeah. And for members of the public, the protocol that we use is that commissioners get to ask the first series of questions, and then after that first series, then members of the public can make their comments or questions. So questions from members of the commission?
I have a question for Michael. This is Paul. Will this actually end up looking like it looked 60 years ago? Or is this a sort of a more enhanced and artistic kind of enhancement of it?
It's a good question. It's hard to know exactly what it looked like 60 years ago. Our goal is to, a lot of our site understanding today is based on our exploration of the site, of what the soils are, of looking at historical imagery and historical mapping and try to understand what the site was. Having said that, I think this project is unique in that the project team recognized that as temperatures shift and continue to shift over the coming decades, some of the plants that some of the trees, especially in woody species that would have been here 60 years ago, might not do very well here in the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And so you can see that in the reforestation plan we have here, and reforestation is a big part of this project too for carbon sequestration purposes. But a lot of the plants that have been identified for planting are right now more readily found in the mid-Atlantic states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia. And the idea is to be a little bit more climate forward thinking for this site, and that we are not chasing to try to keep, northern hardwood species successful here, but trying to think, what will be succeeding here in 20, 30, 40 years. So that's a long answer to answer your question. It won't be,
Yeah.
the idea is to bring it back as much as possible. I don't think it's ever possible to bring it back, a restoration site to what it was before.
Probably no ash trees.
Yeah, right. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that also, this is Julie with Weston O'Neill. At least the northern part of the site was farmed before it was a golf course. And so there's a long history of modification on this site. And so we'd have to go back probably even further in time to find its natural state. But the intent is to, as Michael was saying, to kind of reverse and undo a lot of those modifications and then allow it to kind of find its own new equilibrium.
Other questions from commissioners? My understanding has been that although you can't recreate what once was, you can allow to come back into effect the dynamics that once were. And that whatever those produce would be the new normal, the new natural state.
Yeah, that's a good way to also explain process-based restoration. It's setting up the systems that will allow the natural system to sustain and create itself, diversify itself.
I have a
Other comments or
question.
go ahead.
I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to the way that this will help with issues of stormwater management in the area by building this wetlands area. As I understand it, it's kind of a natural bowl, so it wouldn't have adverse effects on any structural issues in the area. Could you speak to that a little bit more, please?
Sure. So currently, and I think a way this site was sort of initially investigated was the incredible amount of turbidity and water flashiness of the stream, really high flows downstream and into Arcadia. Our partner there was noticing really high mysterious flows coming into the site. And so all the stone and armoring, all the rock that's in the channel right now is part of that issue. And all the tile drains as well are bringing groundwater out of the golf course areas into that stream as quickly as possible. So when we get into recreating the wetlands, right now it's pretty much turf. And even though turf is not impervious per se, it kind of functions like impervious surface. It's compacted, it's flat, and in significant rain events, water often runs across turf grass, not infiltrating into it. And so the upper area where in this image where the 21 and the 23 are relatively flat, and that flatness continues a good bit southeast of there. Yeah, the idea, I mean, obviously the rock comes out of the stream, the tile drains come out to stop that artificial drainage, but the surface is roughened. And so we have used this in other restoration projects where we want to create wetlands or have water move slowly through an area. And essentially the work is done where just the surface is mixed. And I would say, probably about a foot more or less, and it's just left in a roughened kind of way. So that's the wetland. It's important that when the stream is restored, that at a certain flood event, the water is able to leave the stream and get into the wetlands, right? So we want the stream to not just send all of that water downstream in the channel. We want to make sure that the woody debris or the banks of the stream are adjusted in a way so that at a certain, like a 2-year storm, for example, that water is able to fill up the stream channel, get out of its normal natural height of bank and spill into the floodplain or the adjacent wetland. As that water spills into the wetland or the floodplain, you're taking it out of the channel, right? So it's not heading down and creating this sort of peak flow event downstream that could be a flooding issue. But the water eventually will slowly release out of the wetland or out of the floodplain back into the stream channel. So it's sort of it's sort of a temporary hold rather than sending all the water down today is a good example. All the water right now or the majority of water is heading into that stream channel and heading out of the site. If you've got better floodplain connectivity, better adjacent wetlands connected, the water will spend more time. We often refer to it as residence time. So we'll increase the residence time of water on the site and take the peak of that flow velocity off of the mainstream channel itself.
Thanks,
Thank
that's
you.
helpful.
Welcome.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I'd like to know about reporting on progress during the process of restoration. Obviously, one of the things that we would do as a Conservation Commission is share that information with the public, and I'm wondering what kind of regular reports are planned, what kind of information could we ask for updates during the process, just so that we could be a conduit to our public.
Sure. Yeah. For restoration projects similar to this, we conduct regular construction visits. I think the frequency of that is kind of variable to the project, but with something like this that's very close to where we are, it would be several times a week, if not daily. In terms of the reporting, Julie, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the types of reporting that we've used for past projects, or.
Yeah, so there are kind of standard procedures that we would use and checkpoints where we would be documenting things like vegetation, hydrology information from the shallow groundwater wells that are on site. But this project is a little bit unique in that we're anticipating doing construction over multiple phases, and that's largely funding driven. And obviously the whole funding landscape is a little bit up in the air at the moment. So the project may take longer and kind of more phases than what we may have originally hoped. There's also a number of elements that are intended to be implemented through volunteers. The city already has a good, robust group of folks who are available and excited about doing things like tree planting. And so that activity is likely to be volunteer driven, as are the installation of the beaver dam analogs. So all that to say that I anticipate that there may be a lot more frequent updates to provide the public as small pieces are completed, and we'd be able to provide information on what was done, how it was done, photos of what those installations look like, in addition to what would be sort of more of your standard restoration tracking data on vegetation and things like that. We also have baseline data that's been collected on macroinvertebrates and fish in Nashawanek Brook. And so those are things that we won't necessarily see a response until all of the elements are complete, but those are things that we would then collect post-restoration data on as well, and be able to show comparisons of pre and post. And we'll have that kind of information also for vegetation and some of the groundwater hydrology information.
So our typical construction oversight reporting, internally on projects is kind of a summary of work that's been conducted that week and corresponding photographs.
When you are done with your construction, if you were to hand off monitoring, what sort of procedures do you have if the city was to engage outside experts to step in just to do monitoring, continued monitoring of the recovery? Because I imagine that there's going to be recovery and transformation long after you're off the site. But I'm just wondering about that handoff. Is that something you've done on previous projects?
Go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to say that a lot of restoration projects, unfortunately, don't get a lot of long-term monitoring. So if that's something that the city's excited to do, that's amazing. And we hope that this will be a site that folks will be tracking longer term. But we'll be setting up standard like vegetation transects probably. We would recommend, one of actually the most impactful things, I think, is to have photo points that are established before restoration and always taken from the same place, so you can just visually track that change over time, especially for communicating the restoration to the public. That's a lot more meaningful often than some of the detailed data. But But that could certainly, those things could all be set up with the intent of being able to hand them off smoothly so that someone else could pick up those same methods. Yes.
I'll also add from the state side, this is Kate Benson from DER. In addition to the shallow groundwater wells that Julie mentioned, we also have several stream gauges looking at the surface water flow in the brook to assess the not only the current flashiness of the system, where it enters at Old Wilson Road, but also where it exits the site at that transition point from golf course back to forest. So we'll be looking at that pre and post restoration as well, and DER intends to continue the well monitoring and stream gauge data for several years post restoration construction to assess those impacts. Similarly, from the state side, DER has funded the macroinvertebrate data collection through Cole Ecological, intends to do that again post restoration. And the state has also sampled for fish and will be doing that repeatedly after restoration through Mass Wildlife's fish sampling folks. And also through Mass Wildlife and Natural Heritage looking at turtles and other species of interest.
That leads me to something that I want to just check with Sarah for everybody's understanding. The commission does not have other than part of Sarah's time, does not have a staff. And so we rely on community partners to monitor and manage the properties. Broadbrook Coalition is for the largest, over 1,000 acres at Fitzgerald Lake. But Mineral Hills, Friends of Mineral Hills is our partner. So throughout the community, we have those kinds of partners to do some of the ongoing management. And when you bring up the creation of what in my mind I heard as, well, it'd be great to have kiosks with photographic and descriptive evidence of what you're standing looking at, what it was like 5 years earlier, and what it was like, as time goes by, so that people can see that evolution, that natural evolution of the site over time. Sarah, do we have any sense that there is a community group that might be interested in that, or are we too early in the process right now?
Yeah, it's definitely there. So Tom Manisi from the Office of Planning and Sustainability, who many of you watching may be familiar with, has been working not just in the Rocky Hill Greenway, but at the several thousand acres of conservation properties across the city, and working himself to remove invasive species and do trail work and other activities, but also to work with existing groups and try to re-energize and create new partner groups where possible. And there definitely is like a core group of volunteers here that could be expanded into a Friends of Rocky Hill Greenway.
Great. Glad to hear. Because this all by, not very often our acquisitions are less, fewer acres than this, and B, less significant in terms of the overall sophistication of the plan. A lot of times we buy undeveloped land and leave it undeveloped. And this is a case where the restoration is really, I think, a rare opportunity, a wonderful opportunity. Other comments, questions from commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, were there any invasive issues out there? And if so, is there a prevention plan or a monitoring plan or a plan to get rid of them?
Michael, do you want to speak first to what you saw on site?
I had myself on mute. I was already talking to myself.
Oh.
I apologize. And you can't see my face, so you don't know I'm talking to myself. Yeah, sorry about that. That's a good question. I think the city has already started a fairly strong effort on managing invasive species at the site. Most sites that have been neglected for this period of time often have an extensive, diverse, ecology of invasive species already. That said, there are certainly invasives on the site, but not extensive. Sarah or somebody could probably speak to it more, but my sense is that it's been tackled pretty well. There is an invasive species management plan that's included in the NOI with our project, and I think that's pretty standard with any of these types of projects. Given soil disturbance and land disturbance, that gives a pretty good opportunity for invasives to move in. So there's always a monitoring and management plan associated with projects like this.
Yeah, especially with your roughing up the surface approach, it might leave the door open for more invasive to be a problem.
Yeah, that is
don't
a
wanna
that
let
is a
that weed
potential
get
issue.
started.
So there's a big component of this, which is the designing, then the implementation, and then the monitoring. I would say, and I think Julie said it. Often monitoring is not funded as well, but it's important to monitor for these things to make sure the system gets the jump start we want it to get right from the beginning.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? If not, questions or comments from members of the public? Mr. Stolberg had a question at the beginning.
I would like to say that I am an abutter, but the project itself, I believe, is worthwhile. It's undoing what the previous owners tried to do, and that was to control the water to make the project of playing golf a little bit drier. And I think the idea of creating what looks like a little bit of a Fitzgerald Lake kind of a project where people will be able to actually go into the wild. I don't know why, though, that it has to occur by making my street a dead end at two ends with a culvert missing. Why can't the culvert be made to accommodate the flow of water, and remain a street with parking, there should be parking there now, as a matter of fact, off-street parking, I mean, and for safety purposes, and still remain a viable project without closing a street? That part I don't understand. See, part of my property here,
That's a
part of my
reasonable question.
property,
Let's make the,
abuts
let's allow the planners
a
to
trail.
answer the question.
Well, I guess the question is, why does the road have to be made a dead end and remove the culvert in order to have this project be successful?
I understand.
I can take a first cut at that. So I would say we looked at multiple alternatives, and removing the culvert was just one of them. But the reason that it came to the top is several-fold. One obvious one is long-term maintenance. I don't know off the top of my head how many culverts there are in the city of Northampton, but there are many, and many of them are old and aging and in need of repair and replacement. And every one of those has a significant cost associated with it. So replacing a culvert of this size with one that would meet the stream crossing standards, conservatively, you're probably looking at $750,000. And when you start multiplying that across all the culverts in the city, you're now into just, tens and tens of millions of dollars probably that's going to be needed over time. And so from a financial standpoint, if there are culverts that aren't needed, getting rid of some makes a lot of sense for everybody in the city over the long term from a cost perspective. So that's one piece. But then when we invited folks to the site, I think that was the fall of 23 that we had folks out and did some site walks. We started talking to people, and one of the first things that we were hearing was about the fact that people use this road as a cut through, and it's very fast moving traffic. People speed through here. They don't feel comfortable allowing their kids to ride their bikes along this street. And so from a traffic calming perspective, having it not be a cut through has a lot of benefits for immediate neighbors as well. I recognize that you are an immediate neighbor and you don't like the idea, but I think that a lot of your fellow neighbors on the street are kind of excited about the possibility of getting rid of all of that cut through traffic. So that's another piece. And then just from an ecological perspective, the ability to completely open that up and have it be more of a 20, 30, 40-foot opening, as opposed to keeping it confined just to the width of the stream, provides a lot more connectivity for both aquatic organisms, terrestrial passage for turtles and things to connect into the wetlands above, and also just provides a lot more hydraulic capacity for larger capacity events. And I guess the last piece, going back to the maintenance, we did also very briefly consider the option of leaving the culvert as is, but it is not only undersized, but it's also in bad condition. And that's especially evident right now, where it has failed and is blocked significantly, and DPW was not able to open it up during that storm. And so that's why the road is temporarily closed as it stands today.
Well, I understand what you said, and I'm not going to disagree with you totally. As far as the speed and traffic on the street, that can be handled in a different fashion. As far as replacing the culvert is concerned, currently with the DPW, that's an engineering problem, and I certainly would be more than happy to help them solve that problem, because it can be done even in the condition it's in. But I'm wondering, instead of a culvert, what about a bridge? If you're going to put a bridge in for people to walk across, why not a single lane bridge so that the road can remain open,
Mr.
just like Clement Street? That's all I'm asking.
The commission has the responsibility for the natural aspects of this. It is not within our purview to make a distinction between, oh, should it be a culvert or a bridge? That would be a DPW matter. The optimization of the future natural evolution of this land, that is our purview. And from that perspective, a more open, less artificial, in other words, not a narrow culvert, but an open stream is an improvement that we would want to support. Whether that can be accomplished by a footbridge or a traffic bridge, that's not our purview. That's something that you would bring elsewhere.
Okay, then the only thing I would ask them, which I haven't seen in this plan, is how are you going to treat the people coming to this area from one end, from either Route 66 or from Florence Road, and they're going to come to this area? How is the city or the plan that's in place here going to treat the traffic that arrives at my front door? Because my front door is at the beginning of one of the trailheads. What's going to happen to that traffic? And I don't see that in the plan.
Again,
I don't see the parking lot. I just don't see it in the plan.
That is not part of the Conservation Commission responsibility. The traffic impact, if it were dead-ended, I think that does solve the traffic amount. But to address your question, that's not really something that the commission can develop an opinion on. We can advocate for the most natural opening to allow water to flow, but what you build over that, that's not our job.
Okay,
Julian and Michael, would it be possible?
could you just tell me then, where would that fall in the purview of the plan? Where would that fit? Who would I see to answer that question?
Julie and Michael, would it be possible to look at the detail sheets for the two ends of the road with the parking lot on the south and then the turnaround on the north?
Yes.
Sure.
Sorry, I couldn't hear all of what you just said, Sarah.
I just asked for yeah. Eric, if you could just remain on mute. It creates a ton of echo when it's not. So I just asked Fuss and O'Neill if they could pull up these detail sheets so that we could take a closer look at how the ends of the road would be treated, because it is relevant in the larger project and the commission's role as an owner of the property as well.
That's what you're looking for, Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah, so the formal parking lot is what you're seeing here now. That would be on the other side of the road, on the south side. The reason that was selected is because when we had that site walk and invited folks out to the site, we also were collecting information. I think we had 3 or 4 dozen folks that showed up, and we were collecting information on how they got there and which direction they were coming from. And the vast majority of people were arriving from the south. And so that was the reason why we elected to put the vehicle parking on the south side. There's also more room in uplands here, so it makes sense. But our first goal was to capture where people were actually coming from. And then, Michael, if you scroll up to the other end. On the north end of the site, we have just the asphalt is not for parking there. It's a emergency vehicle turnaround to allow fire trucks to be able to turn around. And then we would have a pedestrian trailhead and bike racks at this end to accommodate folks coming from that direction. So to just make a guess at the answer to your question, Mr. Stolberg, I think initially you might see some folks who came to this end because they didn't understand that the parking was at the south, but I think they'd quickly figure it out, and then the traffic wouldn't be coming down your street. It would be arriving at the parking lot on the south side.
I appreciate what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And maybe you're going, I hope you're right, because right now they will run both ends. Right now we have many cars at the south end, and we have many cars at the north end. And you can imagine where a good percentage of them turn around when they finish their walk in my driveway. And that's not appropriate for me. That's all. And I worry a little bit about what happens at plowing time, and I worry about emergency vehicles. And the turnaround here is fine. I hope it's adequate for emergency vehicles and so forth. That's all. I would like to see parking for people down at that end, because I have a feeling that people are going to try coming down that end. But in any way, I was asking Mr. Lake before he's muted me, who I would see to talk about that, the configuration of the ends, if you will, who I would see to talk to somebody about that, just so I'd have an idea. Are they serious about doing, because I know Massachusetts law says that 800 feet is supposed to be a dead end, and you've got me out at 1,500 feet, which is a dead end. Somebody's going to have to make that kind of decision too. And I'm just wondering where that falls. Is that the Planning Commission? That's all I'm trying to understand. I'm just trying to understand who I go to talk to. That's all.
Sure. So it's a mix of the two. So the planning board would need to approve the road dead ending, and the Department of Public Works would be involved in all of the details of what that would look like. So all of the signage at the ends of the road, how they would treat the roadway in the winter. But they have definitely been involved closely in the conceptual discussions. And in the interim too, since the roadway decided to close itself as a surprise to everyone. If you have ongoing concerns about people turning around in your driveway, especially due to that, you could reach out to DPW.
And you're not part of planning, are you, Sarah?
I am, yes.
You're not the plan.
I'm not the planning board.
I'm not the planning board.
I'm
Yeah, the planning office.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public or comments?
Yeah, hi. This is Renee Teberge. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yep,
can.
we can hear you.
I just wanted to mention, because you, Kevin, had talked about wanting to have pictures and stuff. I've been photographing Pine Grove since 2020 on a regular basis by each season. And I do send a number of photographs to Tom and East. I believe they're in the database at the Planning and Sustainability. So there is a 5-year retrospective that I just sent him for a couple of seasons, maybe in the last month or two. And I will be continuing to do that. I do this on a volunteer basis. Tom and I talked about it about 5 years ago. And I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can. So there's a pretty large database of photographs of almost all of the Pine Grove, depending on the season and how much I was able to get done each season. And, that's available to anybody who wants to use it. And if
Very good.
somebody can't,
Very good of you to do. Thank you.
happy to do it. And if somebody wants to contact me directly, Tom can give them my contact information.
Great, thank you. Brian Adams, I see your hand up.
Hi, my name is Brian Adams. I live on 254 Old Wilson Road with my wife, Maury Phippen. And I just want to express my appreciation to the city, to all folks involved. This is such a ambitious restoration effort. Ecologically, it's such a piece of good news in a time of such troubling news. So I just want to extend my thanks to all involved. I mean, the massive amount of work that's gone into planning this, the massive amount of work that will go into the restoration efforts. So a big thank you. The one question I have is timetable. Is there such a thing on this? I mean, do we know when the road would be officially closed if it was, when construction would start, when some of these restoration efforts would come, when the dam would go? I'll stop there.
Good, fair question.
Yeah, that is a good question. We are, as we discussed, most of the permitting has been completed and approved. I think what we're getting into now, and the big question mark for a lot of projects, is funding. And so just understanding that, construction will move forward when funding is available. So I believe, and Sarah or Julie can correct me, I believe the goal is to be queued up and ready to do things next year, but that's really dependent on the funding to be ready to do that.
Yeah, our hope is that if all permits are in hand, that we would potentially be able to start some elements as soon as this fall. But the intent is to work from the south end of the site up so that we are both from an ecological standpoint, that makes sense. We want to kind of free up the downstream reach of the brook and get the beaver dam analogs in place to start capturing sediment that will help to reconnect the floodplain at that end first before we start doing activities further north. But then also we're kind of working our way out of the site as we go so that we don't have to cross back into areas that have already been restored. And so before the road closed itself down, the thinking was that that would likely be the last piece. But that, the failure of that culvert a week or two ago kind of threw that into question a bit. So I don't have a good answer to that. But a lot of elements do really come back to funding. And so what we may have hoped would be a project that we would complete over the course of 1 or 2 seasons may unfortunately wind up having to take additional seasons beyond that. But the hope is still to be able to do some work with volunteers or relatively small money contracts at the south end of the site as soon as later this year.
Yes, ask that.
Any other, Brian, do you have your hand up again?
Sure, I'll ask one more question. Is any of the funding, the restoration funding, contingent on federal funds? Or is this all state monies? Do we worry with the federal clawbacks and the direction the federal government is going that that there wouldn't be funds available for this?
Personally, yes. That's my short answer. But yeah, that is a concern. But the state and DER especially have been very actively supportive of this project. So that can be a component, but large restoration projects like this often have some significant component of federal funding for construction.
I'll just note that funding to get to this point has been a combination of city, state, and federal funds. The city, of course, has contributed money from the outset for the purchase and initial work. The state, through Division of Ecological Restoration, has committed funds through our technical services contracts, which has allowed consultants such as Fuston O'Neill to to move this project forward through the planning, design, and engineering phase. And a big chunk of that money that we are wrapping up now is through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. And that has enabled the bulk of the work in the past 2 years to come through. In terms of construction, we're looking at what mix of funds we might be able to use going forward, recognizing that state and federal funding situations are a bit in flux now, but we're committed to getting this project done in whatever timetable it takes.
Any other comments? or
I'm leaving,
questions?
and Michael, I want to thank you for your presentation. That was very full and very complete, and I appreciate the effort you made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Solberg.
you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners or from members of the public?
I guess I'd just, I don't know how much this is just for me, but I'm curious about the opportunities for volunteers for plantings and when the timing of that would happen. I'm assuming that part of it's dependent on funding to secure the plant materials, and also timing in terms of the regenerative work about where planting should go at which time. But I'm wondering if you have any general information about that at this time, and if there's something that volunteers could be doing to kind of help with the jump starting of the regenerative work.
I would say we don't have any specifics at this point, but one of the things we're doing now is starting to put together some guidance for the volunteer elements that will include things like, this is a piece that could be planted at any point because it's not going to be otherwise impacted by the restoration. Whereas there'll be other areas that can't get planted until A, B, and C are also already accomplished. So I would think that as soon as permits are in place, that some of that planting could potentially begin if there are funds to purchase plants. And truly, purchasing the plants is usually not the really expensive pieces. So that may be able to proceed even if some of the funding is limited. But we'll certainly, through the city, be able to continue providing updates on that as things get a little better defined.
Okay, thanks. And I was very enthusiastically encouraged looking at the plant list, the proposed plant list for that. The only one that I might question is the Viburnum dentatum because of the viburnum leaf beetle. It's seen as extremely susceptible by Cornell. So you might consider another native viburnum, but it's a great plant list.
I could also
you.
foresee citizens being more than willing to contribute trees out of their own pocket to offset any budget deficits for the tree plantings.
Good point, Paul. Yeah.
Other
Hello.
comments? Commission or otherwise? Yes.
Hello, we are 111 Old Wilson Road, Harry and Jan, and we're so excited about this project. We've been here 22 years, so it's been wonderful to see it evolve, and we appreciate all that you're doing, and also we appreciate that we're able to join and listen, and I'm with Melissa. I'd like to know about volunteering to do plantings as well, so I'll look into the website and see if there's somewhere to get on an email list, but we're very grateful. We love the site. It's been so terrific to see it evolve. Our concern right now, though, is that standing water, what's happened with the flooding there. So I'm hoping that something is going to get that moving. It's across from the culvert, this right up to the road. I know you've probably seen it all, but it's never been like that in 22 years. So
The frog population.
the frog population is croaking away. So they're having a good time.
Right. We
Yeah.
heard the frogs when we were out there. The
Mhm.
bullfrogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, do you know anything about the DPW effort to get that clear?
Yeah, so DPW responded immediately and tried to alleviate whatever the blockages in the culvert. They weren't able to safely do all of the things that they were hoping to do due to the water levels. They did jet rod the culvert. That did not fix the issue. There was some damage to the head wall, so they were thinking that the culvert may have had some internal failure, other issues, but if and when it stops raining and the water level subsides, they're definitely planning to go back out and see what they can do. But you know, it may not be possible to open the road. They're not quite sure because they haven't been able to do a thorough assessment of that.
Yeah, we've just never seen that little stream not flowing. It's just dead stopped, sitting there. Well, just, you know, not moving at all for the first time in the 22 years we've been here.
You're speaking of the north side of the road?
Correct. We're on the north side, 111, just one up
Right,
from
so-
Eric Dahlberg, across from the first trailhead is our home.
So presumably this is the blockage of the culvert under the road that's causing the backup.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
as Sarah says, I hear that DPW, as water levels allow,
Right.
will try to repair that, but that their first efforts were not successful.
Right. I do have one question. I think it would be maybe for Michael. I think you had mentioned that there was some surveying of the different types of wetlands, and that was a couple, maybe 2 years ago. And one of our trees on the edge of our property, there was a pink tag. I know we have wetlands behind us, but we were just curious what that was meaning, because we know the blue ones are all where the stream is, and then there were pink ones. And on one of our trees, there was a little pink tag, so we were curious.
I'm curious too. Did the pink flag have any lettering on it?
No, it was just a pink,
ribbon.
pink ribbon on one of our hemlocks just at the road, by the road.
So when I was there hanging wetland flags, the wetland ribbon that I use has large block letters printed on it that say wetland delineation, and it keeps repeating and repeating. So the pink flagging that I use, it's specific to it. It tries to identify itself, even if the labels that I write on come off. Surveyors also use pink flagging when they're surveying a road or elevations around the road, which was also done at this site. So it's possible it's a flag from a surveyor. If it doesn't have any blocks or any marks on it whatsoever, it's not a flag that I hung, I don't believe. And so it's possible that it's a surveyor's flag from one of their control points.
And it could have been the gas company as well. I know they've been doing some surveys of their lines, which they have in the vicinity.
Yeah. So pink gets used by a lot of folks, unfortunately, so it can be a little hard to know who the culprit is.
Any other comments, questions from commissioners or members of the public? If not, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Mason, is there a second? By Paul? Sarah, roll call?
Roll call vote to close the hearing. Downey?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Mason?
Yes.
And Kevin?
Yes. So, someone want to make a motion to grant a permit for the construction as this captured in this application? We haven't had any discussion about it yet, but it seems from the vibe that I picked up from the other commissioners who were out on the tour and from much of these questions, this is a wonderful opportunity, rare and wonderful, and in one fell swoop, a multi-year fell swoop will provide something really important and valuable for Northampton as an addition to our already 27% of our land area is preserved in perpetuity, Sarah. So this will be in addition to that. Is there a motion? So we motion to approve a permit
So moved.
by Mason and a second by Melissa. Any further discussion? Any particular conditions we want to apply other than the standard conditions that always are attached that list in attachment A?
I like the idea of some periodic reporting back to us on the progress so that we can let the public know what's happening.
You have a suggestion for frequency, quarterly, semi-annually? What do you think?
Maybe twice a year.
With a photograph and some narrative?
Right.
Fair enough. And we
And
can add that condition. Anything else?
with Julianne's suggestion that there be fixed points of photographs that show the change in those specific places from those particular angles.
And possibly coordinate with Mr. Theberge, who's
Yes,
been already doing some of this work
which I think is
to
wonderful.
build on what he's already got.
Yep.
Good, can add that condition?
Sarah, I have a question about funding flow for this. Is this funding that's provided to the contractors and consultants in advance of work? Or is this a reimbursement flow or a combination of the two?
It would depend on the individual grant source. So if it, if it were city funding, we would require that the work be done, and then we would reimburse for that. We can't pay for anything before it occurs. Some grant programs are slightly different than that, but it would be a mix.
Do you feel comfortable in that, just to be sure that there isn't work that gets half done and due to an unexpected funding cutoff that we know can happen at any time, especially a project this large with some federal component, I don't know if we want to add a formal condition as to like a calculated stopping point for each phase, so that we know we have money in hand, or we're comfortable that the contractor is going to assume the financial risk for completing the work, rather than getting partway through it, running out of money. For example, having an unstabilized bank. I'm not assuming that that's anyone's intent, but if money runs out and you can't pay people, you can't pay people.
Yeah, and in that case, in an absolute worst case scenario, like say we got a federal grant and then we determined that we weren't going to be able to get reimbursed for that, because this is a city-owned property and the city is the applicant, the city would be responsible for that. So we wouldn't get into a situation where, a contractor would walk away because we didn't have the ability.
Okay.
We would work with them to button things up before it got to that.
Okay, but that would that come out of Conservation Commission budget, or where would that?
It really depends, and we would figure it out. And we wouldn't ever proceed with portions of a project if we didn't have a funding source identified. If we were able to get an MVP grant or CPA funding or additional DER priority project funds or whatever that was, we would get, we would assign that chunk of money to a particular portion of the project. It wouldn't be like, well, let's do the dam and the trails and the other, the roadway all at the same time. It would be clearly delineated and identified. This project is a little unique because it's such a large scale, and you're permitting everything, but we don't know exactly what the timeline will look like, and we don't know what the phases will be. We know it will need to be a phase project because of the scope and the cost, but we don't know even what phases would proceed first and which would come next, or, if potentially they would overlap. So that's something that we would work on behind the scenes, but would be difficult to address through an order of conditions.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you have sufficient time yourself, because this will entail a lot of work on your part. We may come and go, but you're more likely to be the person who's going to be closely involved in decisions on phasing and funding. So
yeah, and for larger portions of the project, like for the dam removal or for wetlands restoration, that would be taking a longer period of time, we would most likely engage a construction administration firm to be the people on the ground dealing with the contractor and volunteers day to day.
Okay, thank you.
Does it seem like there's any language that might condition that, Downey, that you want to include, or?
No, I think if everyone's aware of the concern, and that's, I'll just leave it on Sarah's shoulders.
As
I
we
mean,
leave
to
so
some
much on
extent, it's
Sarah's
not
shoulders.
different than, granting an order of conditions to someone and they go bankrupt, which has
Yes.
happened before. We work with whoever's left or the receiver or whoever it be to make sure that wetlands aren't impacted.
Just the scale of the project, both the 105 acres and the number of interventions is, as Kevin said, something beyond what we usually do. Even where we have a 100-acre parcel that we're monitoring for invasives or doing an inventory prior to taking title. This is a big job and will demand a lot of your time, I'm sure, over the next however many years it takes.
And the city has a lot of incredibly valuable partners that we depend on. Some Boston O'Neill and other contractors who worked with the Division of Ecological Restoration and Mass Audubon as well.
So we have a motion to grant a permit, and we have a couple of additional conditions in addition to the standard list. Any other conditions to be added? Any further discussion? If not, all in favor. Sarah, roll call.
Downey?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes,
Melissa?
two thumbs.
Yes.
Mason?
Yes.
And Kevin?
Yes, indeed.
All right, thank you.
It'd be great to stay in touch with this as it proceeds. Michael, you have a hand up?
So I just wanted to tell the residents at 111 Old Wilson Road, your house is to north, so I was not up that way. So the flag, it's not a wetland flag.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you,
All
Mike.
right, everybody. Any other agenda items for tonight? Any business not foreseen when the agenda was put together? If not, what do we have coming up in June, Sarah?
So in June, I don't know which ones at this point will be on the 12th and which ones will be on the 26th, but there's a project at Industrial Drive. There's a bike path project along Mount Tom Road from Atwood Drive down to the East Hampton line and actually beyond. Those are the big ones, and a couple RDAs.
Any word on the Mount Tom Road junkyard project? No. All right. Well, it's all in their court. We'll see what they come up with. All right, good. Anything else by anybody? If not, thanks, everybody. Good to see you all. It's raining like hell out there, but it is the unofficial beginning of summer, so I hope it gets off to a good start for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time
Good night.
tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.